What's good, my ballers? Welcome to episode number 9 of the All Ball Podcast. I'm your host, once again, Nate J. And if you haven't already, I say it every week, but go and add our Instagram page at the All Ball Podcast. Keep an eye out for our YouTube page as well. We got full-length videos and content from all our podcasts. Scotty Mac keeps that heat rolling, so go ahead and check it out. Matter of fact, do it right after this episode. On this week's show, if you are a CFL fan, this is the show for you. As many of you already know, there has been resounding silence as to whether or not the CFL 2020 season will be happening. But moments before I recorded this, a glimmer of hope appeared for the CFL players as the league sends out a memo yesterday morning outlining a return to play requirements that need to be met by both the PA and league in order to have the 2020 season. Some of the highlights from this memo have touched on government funding, a hub city, and practice roster increasing in size, to name a few. Before I even had the email in my inbox, Justin Dunk was reporting it as usual. So I figured who better to have on this week than the man himself to give us an early breakdown. Listen as I try to uncover whether I can go back to my day job or not. So without further ado, let's learn more about what this memo means for CFL football this year and beyond. You've heard of Woj bombs in the NBA, but here in the CFL, we've got slam dunks. The man joining me now is a former quarterback, which comes to no surprise, seeing his command of the field. And if you're in the CFL, this man probably knows more about you than you know about yourself. I present the one and only Justin Dunk. Justin, how you doing, man?
Dude, I'm well, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to follow up that intro, man. That's hype. Let's go.
Yeah, I try to hype people up, get them feeling good on the show. But, man, I remember coming up to Guelph during your playing career, seeing my buddy Chris Rossetti and watching one of your games. And, man, I saw a dude that was a tremendous competitor, athlete, great arm. I just need to know, how do we go from there to being the Adam Schefter of the CFL?
Well, Schefter's in a league of his own, but I appreciate you for making me sound like a better football player than I was. Chris Rossetti, I felt like was going to be the truth, and now he's in the NFL, obviously. So I'll try to give you the Cole's Notes version. So essentially what happened was, like a lot of other guys, I was mainly in university to play football, right? I kind of had that idea that I wanted to make it everything, and then you realize that 5 years is going to go through much faster than you even think, right? So you kind of get to that 4th or 5th year, and I'm like, what am I going to do? I really wanted to take a shot at the CFL, but everyone knows what happens with Canadian quarterbacks. It's getting a little better these days. So I thought, well, what I'm most passionate about is football, and I kind of like the media aspect. So I thought, I'm going to try to go that way. So essentially, I had a really good mentor named Darren Stevenson at CTV Kitchener who would come out to cover our games. And I started asking him a bunch of questions about the media. So he helped me out. I actually spent a year writing for the student paper at Guelph, which is independent. It's called The Ontarian. And they actually paid. So I felt like instead of going to college, I got this free education, but it was even better. I got paid to learn. Right. So I took that and then started writing for the CFL and sort of slowly just developed the contact base. And then all of a sudden, I didn't even really think of it myself because I never approached it that way, but I was getting all this information and it revolved largely around the CFL draft, covering guys like you coming into the league. Yeah. So I developed this base and relationships with not only players, but agents and scouts, and sort of had all this information that at the time, to be quite honest, I didn't know what to do with. And then it just becomes an evolution. But what I really believe at the heart of it was that those relationships, just like anything else, are trusting and honest, and guys that I can take at their word all the time. And I'm the same way, that if someone says to me, hey, this is off the record, then that stays off the record for as long as it needs to. I might even have to go to my grave with some stuff. So that's sort of the Cole's Notes version of how it goes.
That's super cool because, obviously now I've started this podcast and, I'm starting to, think about life after football, and, media side, obviously, affects me because I'm always seeing things in the media and thinking, how do I get my voice out there? How do I get guys represented in ways that, you may not always see? So that's kind of my slant to it. So it's kind of cool to see how you kind of went from that to, like I said, the Adam Schefter and the CFL. But and I honestly, to say for people that are listening, I lean on you for information, because you honestly have stuff that, like, it just blows my mind. You have stuff that, no one else has. Like, I'll ask 3-4 people questions, and when I get to you, I'll get the direct answer. So, I definitely appreciate your services. Obviously the CFL has decided they're coming back. They've contacted the Players Association, and there was a memo that came out this morning just before we got on. What are some of your takeaways from this memo?
Well, I think the main takeaway for me is the fact that the league actually has more of a plan here than a lot of people have given them credit for. And you probably have a better idea because of being in contact with the Players Association and maybe your individual team reps more than me. But the fact that they've laid out the hub city conditions essentially here on what might actually lead to playing in a shortened season shows me that there's an actual plan in place from the league office side, because a lot of people felt like, what was the league doing? Were they even really wanting to have a 2020 season? But now that this memo's out there and they've sort of stipulated, at least to start bargaining, I think that's, to me, what it says, is that the league is actually real about wanting to play. It's not just lip service anymore.
Right, and that's been the main kind of point of contention between the players and the owners, or not the owners, but Randy Ambrosie, because we're thinking there's been no contact, there's been nothing said, no leaks, nothing. And from a player's point of view, it's kind of tough, because you're thinking, I've got, provide for my family, I got to make plans. If we're not playing, if we are playing, there's different things that goes into it. What, from the league side, can you tell us that went into the kind of decision not to really open the lines of communication?
Well, number one, and first and foremost, and I've had this communicated to me by multiple people on the league side, is that, Randy Ambrosie specifically, in terms of labor law, he's not actually supposed to be communicating with the players, right? And you've known this sort of going through the collective bargaining agreement talks, that there are the committees that do that, and you're really only supposed to negotiate at the table. So it's not like Randy Ambrosie is going to pick up the phone and be calling different players. So I think, to me, that's sort of something that needs to be out here, right? And the way that the league has always operated is they don't tend to, unless they feel like it's in their best interest, leak out any details. They want to make sure that they're operating from a place of knowledge and not having it out there for everyone. But there's different sides to the fence, right? There's reasons, and I understand this being in media for a while, why you might want to have some things in the public and why you might want to keep those behind closed doors. Also understand it from the players' side, right? The players have been adamant that they want to get back on the field, right? You feel the same way, I'm sure, that is out there. So the league doesn't want to have the potential negative PR and be the ones looked at as the bad guys and the reason that there was no 2020 season, if it's possible with all the safety protocols to actually do so. So I think that's why the league has been so tight-lipped. They've done it in the past, and then here and now, because there's just a laundry list of things to go to before they can even get to the bargaining table with the players and you guys.
Right, and in the memo that was sent out, that makes sense from the league point of view. First of all, it does make sense, but as a player, honestly, it is excruciating, because everything is hoping on us having a season, and if we don't, we want to have enough time to kind of know. But it makes sense what you're saying. It still doesn't make it any easier. On the memo, it said that by July 23rd, everything kind of needs to be in place, or I don't know what happens. So can you expand on what happens if things aren't met by July 23rd?
Well, what I take away from that is that's essentially the timeline that the league feels they need to be up and running by, for lack of a better term. So obviously there's been a lot of talk about when the Americans come up here, the quarantine period that they're potentially going to have. Now we've seen with the Toronto Blue Jays that's been waived. So the CFL or the players could argue that's different. But to me, when I look at July 23rd, I think of, okay, that's when you have to have agreement, right? And then if you work forward on some of the dates, it's like, as I said, you have that 2-week quarantine period. You're probably going to have at least 2 weeks, and this would be a good question for you, Nate, in terms of getting ready for a season, because it doesn't sound like we're going to have any preseason games.
Right.
that doesn't even factor into the travel, getting everyone into the bubble, testing. So there's going to be time that goes into that. So when I look at July 23rd, to me that says, okay, that's giving you or the league and the players together a little over a month to potentially get everyone into a hub city, get them quarantined, make sure everybody's healthy before you can even start thinking about potentially training and getting on the field. What do you take away from it?
It's actually a better timeline than I thought we were gonna get. I thought it was gonna be kind of a last minute situation, but July 23rd gives guys, like you said, about a month, and from a health standpoint, that's kind of a lot, all that you can ask for. We were thinking about it, guys. I know guys that have been training religiously on, for the whole kind of like 8 months now, and I know guys that haven't been doing anything. So like now with this memo out, I think guys that haven't been doing anything kind of kickstart their training and potentially save some injuries later on. So I'm happy about the July 23rd that date, because honestly that gives me and everybody else time to formulate plans and things of that nature. For me, another thing that stood out was the practice roster expanding. What does that mean? How does the league have enough money to pay? Because obviously finances have been an issue that's been well documented. So expanded practice rosters, and how does that work? First of all.
So that was one of the little factors that was interesting when you start to go through the list of not just the safety and health protocols, but how are you going to play in Hub City, right? Let's say, for example, and I hope this doesn't happen, but Natalia is getting ready for the game, and somehow, some way, this invisible virus infects you, and the Argos need to find a guy to go in and play and sort of bump everyone up the roster, right? If potentially you need to be out for 2 weeks. So in talking to some personnel guys, I said, well, how are we going to deal with this? Are we going to have to go and bring a guy up from the United States, have him quarantined for 2 weeks? But what if you need that guy to play? And obviously he wants to be able to understand the systems too. So what I'm looking at in terms of the expanded practice rosters is obviously I think that could come down per team. And I do think there could be another group of players that are sort of like that XFL Team 9, where they're practicing, they're out there, they're in the bubble, and they're healthy, and that maybe people can draw from if they're needed because of injuries or, heaven forbid, somebody getting COVID-19, and that takes them out of the game. So to me, that's how I look at it, is that potentially you're going to have more guys there. But as you said, that's going to be extra costs for the league, especially if you're in a Hub City model and you're paying for a guy to be in either the hotel or a dorm room, all of his food, the travel, all that stuff. But it's better doing it that way than it is having to bring a guy up from the States, go through that quarantine period, and then have to get him ready and ingrained in the playbook.
Probably better to be safe than sorry. But, now the fact that you're saying that, it makes me think Chris Jones was way ahead of his time having that extra practice squad there in Saskatchewan. So that's this
the free practice squad, man. To be real.
Another hot topic going on is how teams or the league is going to handle pay. What are you hearing in terms of how the payment of players is going to be handled?
So what I've heard all along, and this could change within the bargaining discussions, is that it's going to be prorated pay. It's essentially going to be based off what you are going to be paid for a full season, and then take that and multiply by the number of games that the league gets in. Obviously, they're looking to have at least like an 8-9 game season. So let's say 9 for easy math. So that would be hopefully half the pay. So I think that even though for some people, it's going to seem like it's a small amount, the guys that are in the minimum salary and you're only coming up here for half a season, well, some of the guys that are in that position are a little different too, because they want to get film. They might be younger, trying to get back to the NFL or even establish themselves in the CFL. So I think it can be worth it for those guys. What I'm kind of curious to get your take on is those veteran guys. You're one of them that have been in the league for a while, that are above that minimum salary, that might have had a signing bonus on their contract. Do any of those guys opt out like we're seeing in the NBA? What do you feel about that?
That's a great question, and it's a discussion I've had with my wife. And as things are happening, I was a little less optimistic as that we're actually going to play, because we hadn't heard anything, and all these other leagues seem to be having plans like 2-3 months ahead of time in place, and we knew where they all stood. But honestly, I started having to talk with my wife and thinking about just the family and being away for 3 months and everything that goes into that, where, she's going to be at home. We got 2 kids, and it's just going to be a tough time because I moved back home to spend more time with the family. Now we're going to go into the hub. So a lot of people are in that situation, are going to have to make tough decisions. And, like you said, it's the CFL is not like the other leagues where we're sitting on millions of dollars, and some guys actually need the money. So there's a lot of tough decisions that are going to have to be made. I'm a guy that loves football, loves playing, but also as being a veteran guy, the family aspect is also just as important to me. So it's hard to make a decision today, but and I have been training this whole time, so it's just so much that goes into it. But a lot of tough decisions are definitely going to have to be made. I've talked to a few guys that have said that they're not coming back. They've already taken up jobs and making good money, and it just makes no sense for them. So a lot of guys have to make tough decisions. You're going to see a lot of like surprise retirements that it's really going to be interesting to see how it all unfolds. Because what do you think happens when you have a team where a few of the star players aren't there, or teams just look differently because guys are opting out? Like, how does the league look then? I don't know.
Yeah, that's real interesting, man. And you look at, obviously, James Wilder Jr. is the biggest name guy so far to, I don't want to say pull the shoot, but make the decision to do what he feels is best for his family. And he falls right in that category that I was alluding to earlier, a guy that had signed sort of in and around that free agent time, got a $25,000 signing bonus. So he's thinking, well, I already have this money in the bank.
Right.
And if I can go sort of get my life after football going, amid the uncertainty of paying in 2020, that's smarter. So then I look at some of the upper tier guys like you're alluding to, the stars, right? Let's say, Willie Jefferson, for example. And I never do this to sort of put anyone's business out there, but Willie Jefferson's signing bonus is in the 6 figures.
Right.
So he's going to look at, is it worth it to come up to Canada, be in a hub away from my family? As you said, all of those things that you're going to go through as a husband and a father, or even just a player, some of the younger guys, is it worth it to risk your body for, let's say, base pay? Because Willie's got a bunch of it. The quarterbacks would be in the same boat. And you look at guys like Mike Riley, Bo Levi Mitchell, those elite guys, even Trevor Harris, Cody Fajardo would have got it too. They would have got some off-season payment, right? And it would have been large. Vernon Adams is one that comes to mind. He signed that extension. He would have got well over 6 figures up front on that deal. So they have a little more flexibility. And I think, as you said, if there's a few stars that say, hey, now I'm going to wait till 2021 for injury reasons, as you mentioned, or family. And I think you alluded to it as well. A lot of people haven't talked about, well, is there going to be increased injuries because there's a smaller time leading up for the season, right? Normally you have a proper training camp and you actually get to play preseason games.
Yes.
But you guys might be asked to just start from day one, week 1, and not have any preseason games. Like, I can't fathom that.
I can't either. It's unbelievable. Yeah, short camp, short preseason, or no preseason at all. Like, that's in a sport like football. There's a reason why training camps are the length they are, just because you build that calluses and you build the body being able to take repeated contact and play through that. And even to not get that, it seems dangerous to me. But I don't know, man. It's crazy to me to think. Like you said, it's unfathomable. Do you think without government funding that we can go through with the shortened season, the Hub City model?
Man, that seems like, I should say the $1 million question, but the critical question, right? Is, can the league actually do it without government money? And I don't get the sense now that the modeling that they're going through necessarily is based on that. I think they have some different models in terms of playing a shortened season in a hub city. And I think as we go along here, and to be quite honest, the virus has been getting better and better, especially in Canada, right? States as a whole, other tire fire. But you look at Manitoba, Saskatchewan, it almost doesn't exist there anymore. Alberta, the numbers are going down. Out of BC, it's been really good. And closer to where you and I are in and around Toronto and that Hamilton area, it's still getting better. Hamilton has been really good over the last little while. So I think there's some owners and team presidents are saying, can we wait this out a little bit till maybe the end?
Yes.
Well, I should say the end, but closer to October potentially, and fans in the stands, because then it's a no-brainer. So I don't think they necessarily need the government funding to have a season, because you have 6 private owners, let's say, that could potentially fund it, that do have deep pockets. Now, that's their decision whether or not they want to reach deep into there and pull out some of that money. But I don't think it's critical, although I definitely think it would help.
Switching gears a little bit, there's been a lot of talk about the NFL, the CFL farm system model. I know you've heard about that. Is that something the CFL would actually consider, or is that just something that's been thrown out there on social media?
Yeah, it's number 2 for sure. It's just been thrown out there. It's great for talk shows and, podcasts like this. But when I look at that on the flip side, it's like, Tay, you just started this podcast, like you want to build up some credibility, right? So that's why I got so focused on being an insider and knowing what's going to happen, right? Or having an idea, is because these ideas get thrown out there and you got to be careful, because some of the people that are doing it are trusted within their circles, whether it's, radio out west or east or TV, what have you. They're trusted by the viewers.
Yes.
Right? So when they start talking about that sort of thing, that people think, oh, well, this is actually something that's going on in the league, when in reality, in this case, explicitly, there's literally no traction to that. Because as I've said, that you look at, and you know this well, okay, the NFL rules, 4 downs, smaller field, 40-second play clocks, right? The athlete that plays in that game is markedly different. That doesn't mean that the guys in the CFL couldn't go down and play in the NFL, because I think Scott Milanovic said it well, that about 75% of CFL rosters could go down and play in the NFL. I think it's easier to assimilate that way than it is NFL style to the CFL. So I think there's some merit in the sense of, the talent is there, but being a farm system doesn't really make any sense. The CFL game, we know, 3 downs, field is wider, longer, right? All the nuances with the rouge, the play clock is 20 seconds. The game is way different. And I would agree, and I think a lot of people would, much more entertaining. That's what people love, the Canadian Football League, right? Even down in the States, it seems to be getting traction. So there's literally been no talk of that, the NFL buying the CFL as a farm league. I will say, I'll give you a little bit of news here that I actually haven't told anyone else. From what I've heard, the XFL actually has a group looking into buying that league that might turn it into an NFL development league. Now, that's a little more speculation than it is hard news right now, but that just tells you that if the NFL is looking for a development league or a farm league, whatever you want to call it, they're going to look at a league that is playing their brand of football, right? Because if you're an NFL team, let's say you're the Buffalo Bills, because they're close to us, you're going to bring a guy up from potentially your development squad during the season. As you know, as a player, you want them to know the playbook, the style of game, be able to put them, if you have to, if there's major injuries, right on the field, they got to feel comfortable. You wouldn't be able to do that with the CFL because it's a completely different game as you ball.
Right. Yeah, no, football is the sport. That's why you really see trades in football, because, it takes a while to assimilate to a team, especially if you're an offensive player, a team's playbook, learning a new playbook that you haven't been in, that you haven't gone through a training camp. Now, add on the fact that you got to learn a new playbook and then a new way of playing, no waggle, stand still, 12 guys on the field. Like, all that is just added to your workload, and it almost makes it impossible. I remember I was talking to speaking back to what you were saying about the entertainment value, Brandon Zylstra. I was talking to him the other day, and he told me he's obviously played in the NFL and has played in the CFL in the past, and said the CFL is the most fun style of play that he's ever played in his life. So that just goes to show you what kind of entertainment value and what kind of league we have here. And I personally think it would be a shame if we became a farm system. So I'm happy you're saying that it's not something that's really being talked about. Shifting gears just a little bit. Obviously, we've all seen the Washington Redskins name change imminent. Are you hearing? I mean, the Edmonton Eskimos came out with a statement the other day that they're kind of standing pat. Are you hearing anything further to that?
Sadly, man, no, not much different, right? They're saying they're going to continue to talk to the northern communities about their name. And dude, I just think it's simple that you have that logo that's EE. They already have the trademark for Edmonton Empire.
Yes.
Just change the name. then all of this talk goes away. That's why, well, I shouldn't say that's why Washington's doing it, but part of the reason Washington's doing it is because he took down all of their swag. And I even find myself now saying either Washington or the Washington Football Club, and not calling them by that. I just think it's the most respectful way to go about it. Some other people started talking about, are the Kansas City Chiefs going to have to do that as well? I think that's sort of a different way to look at it. I don't think Chiefs is necessarily a disparaging term, right? And from my understanding, chief in a tribe was always very well respected. So I think the Washington name needs to go away. You played for the Eskimos, so I'd be curious to get your take. But for me, it's just easy, man. Change it to the Edmonton Empire, Edmonton Express, whatever you want that has an E on it that sounds cool, and just put all of this negative noise to sleep.
Exactly, and you're right. Like I played in Edmonton. I know the people there, don't even think twice about the name. It's so much tradition, so much history behind the name, so much pride behind the name. But I know the name means like meat eater, right? But it's not. The name itself is not offensive, but the way it was used was extremely offensive and disparaging to Inuit people. So if you have just even one person that's offended, I think it needs to go. Like you said, the team has the trademark for Edmonton Empire. They've got, things in the works. I've talked to some people up top, and if they told me, like, if it got to the point where they needed to change it, they're ready to do it. So I know it's easy. I don't know who's making the decisions on that, but you're like you said, I think for me, I think it needs to go.
You got the insider knowledge, man. I like it.
No, it's not inside. I just started asking around because I noticed a lot of people were bringing it up, and before I played there, I didn't think twice about it. I didn't know but I obviously playing there, you have to ask questions, and the people there. I don't think the people there really. They have so much pride and so many good emotions tied to the name and what, you know what I mean? And they're not thinking about it in a negative connotation. But if you ask Inuit people and they tell you, some of them tell you they don't like it, some of them tell you they do, or they think there's pride in it, you don't need consensus to tell you to get rid of it. You just do what's right. If a certain group of people don't like it, just do what's right. You know what I mean? So I think that's the best thing to do, like you said. Just it's real simple. And a lot of teams are going to have this conversation. Like I know the Cleveland Indians are going to have to talk about what's going on there. So it's good. It's a good time in our world where these conversations are having to be had, and teams will have to look internally to see what's going on and how to make the world a better place. So, with the CFL having the memo out, what percentage point would you put on a deal being done? Because we know in the past, these deals, this is like we're giving 3 weeks, through almost a bit over 3 weeks to have something done. What percentage point do you give on actually having a deal done?
Bro, you put me on the spot, but it's cool. That's cool. Been there before. And people have been asking, what's your percentage on a season as well? And the first thing I say is, well, you got to consider the situation is fluid. Yeah. I'm not a doctor, and I'm not a lawyer, and I've never done any labor negotiations either. So you probably have more experience with that with me, just in terms of, knowing the inside and outs of the PA. But, I do get the sense that the players want to play, right? That indication was made on the survey that went out to all the players that they want to play and get on the field. And I think from the CFL's perspective, more and more, and David Braley sort of aside, because I don't think he's been tied in like all the other owners are, that there's an appetite there that the CFL would like to get on the field. They understand that if you're not on the field for a year, potentially, how much you go quiet can affect you in the future. So when you hear Craig Reynolds, let's say the president of the Saskatchewan Roughriders, come out and say it's marginally better financially to play, then I think you have to look at that not only for this year, but what are either the ramifications or the benefits, I should say in this case, of playing. The ramifications would be if you don't play and if you go silent, sponsors leave? Do they find elsewhere to sink those dollars into the leagues that are actually playing? For example, that's one of the main revenue streams that the leagues have. So I think even if it's marginally better to play, or even if it's marginally better not to play, if it's close, I think the league needs to do everything they can to get on the field. The tricky part for me, when you're talking about, an overall deal, I think that can actually come together because both sides would like to play football and they understand, as I said, the ramifications for the future. It's just more to me about the risk. Can the CFL actually risk investing that money in getting to a hub city? And then let's say you happen to have an outburst, heaven forbid, of COVID-19 cases within the bubble, and somehow the virus got in there, and then you had to shut down the season. And I use the example with the Riders, right? They already invested $500,000 into the Grey Cup this year. That's money they're not going to get back. So if you put that money out, put it into testing, put it into traveling all the guys there, put it into the dorm rooms, put it into the food potentially, that's money you're investing in hopefully seeing a return on your investment by getting to the Grey Cup in the end of the season. But if you have to stop and all of that money is not necessarily wasted, but some of it might be seen that way if you all of a sudden have to have a shutdown like the NBA did with Rudy Gobert. Now, I think it's a little bit different because we're seeing all these guys test positive, especially in college ball down in the States, and we haven't even gotten to the season yet. So I think in Canada, the fact that we've gone about it in a much safer way makes me think a little more today that this season could happen.
Okay, that's really good to know. So with all this going on, I think the Schooners, where are we at with them? Because they kind of be pushed to the bottom of the barrel kind of thing. So is the league even talking about them, or what are their thoughts right now? Because that was a potential 10th CFL team that was looking to get rolling, but obviously with everything with COVID and league having to reassess finances and all that, where are they now?
For now, the Atlantic Schooners sadly are anchored, and that's because of a number of things, right? They're just going to be chilling in the water for a while. I still think there's I took your lead on it. So I think there's still an opportunity further to be a 10th team there. But when you look at the situation COVID-19 has created, we're just trying to keep people healthy and fed with a roof over their head sort of thing, right? Especially all the people that were unfortunate to be out of work. So that's going to be the focus, especially for out east. And that next critical step was going to be provincially with the province out there. So they got that key agreement essentially from the Halifax regional municipality for the $20 million if they got a stadium agreement and went to the other different stepping stones. So I think that will still hold there, but there's really just going to be a pause button hit on it. I think there's a possibility of it happening down the line, but there's just so much to digest every day and go through and get through and try to make sure that the citizens are all right before that Atlantic region, I think, is going to put their focus back on a potential CFL team. It had a lot of momentum before COVID-19, which is just too bad, but I mean, it's altered everyone's lives in a number of ways. So I think it's still possible, but there's a big pause button on it right now.
That's tough to see because obviously, a 10th team would create more jobs and more people working in the CFL, and that kind of have the 5 and 5. And I was kind of looking forward to that, but hopefully in the near future we'll see that. Before you get out of here, I have to ask you about Guelph and your alma mater. Something that kind of rubbed me the wrong way was a while back when Stu Lang, I think, took over the team and he was putting a lot of money into the program, and the team was getting new jerseys almost every week and almost becoming the Orient, of the CIS, the OUA. But then it kind of got shut down. I mean, teams like, Western or MAC were behind it, and they kind of, created rules where, they couldn't, have that kind of, those jerseys or those things that attracted recruits. I think they looked at it as a recruiting advantage that other teams did not have. And my take on that was, you have a team that's pushing the limits, trying to, make everybody better, because you have to up your level of play, up your jerseys, up, find a different way to get guys in there, right? But then they're brought down. And you look at in the States where that doesn't happen. If a team like Oregon gets 10 New Jersey season, I don't know, Florida's going to have maybe 12. To just keep upping the ante a little bit. So what was your take on that? I thought it rubbed me the wrong way, because it showed that why won't the other teams just try to get better and be on that level? But why are we just bringing them down and making them on the same level all the time?
Man, I feel you, and I'm going to try to be as unbiased as possible. As you mentioned, like, I went to Guelph. Stu was actually his first year coaching was my last year at Guelph in 2009. But I've always been harder on Guelph than anybody else, right? Because people are going to think that I favor them. So I'll say in the most unbiased way that I'm with you. I think it pushed the level of competition up. And you look at the comparison in the States, obviously, was Oregon. But there's also other schools in the U.S., that had their traditional uniforms. Notre Dame would stick out to me, right? They always had the Golden Dome helmets with the blue jerseys at home and the gold pants. That's what they rock. On the road, it's white jersey. Now, they've thrown in some pinstripe uniforms and a little bit of different things here and there, but their traditional uniform they haven't swayed from. Yeah. So the fact that, as you said, can you recruit based on uniforms, or do you recruit based on tradition, or is it a mix of those things? All those schools in the NCAA are doing it, and I still think that's the case up here. The issue I really think lied in the fact that a lot of the coaches and the schools and the athletic departments felt like every school doesn't necessarily have a Stu Lang, right? And Guelph was really lucky to essentially have this angel investor with an unlimited amount of money that loved football, that wanted to leave a legacy. Well, you don't necessarily have the same amount of dollars coming in at every program like you maybe would in the Power 5 conferences in the NCAA. So I can understand it from that perspective, is they feel like the money is a competitive advantage. But to your point, if you're having a guy like Stu Lang coming in, pushing the envelope, getting all this new kinds of gear, like, bro, you show up to Guelph and it's like they got these tackling remote dummies and stuff like that, right? The craziest new equipment all the time. So it goes beyond even just the jerseys and the flash and dash that you see. Like, the whole new pavilion they've put up is just amazing. Like a barbershop in the locker. People wouldn't even remember that at Guelph when I was here, and this was in 2009. We had like one small workout room that was like literally boarded off with plywood that had one bench in there, a couple squat racks, one of the jammer machines, and like a row of dumbbells, and that was it. It was like, old school. I probably shouldn't say that, but it was kind of like jail time workout, right? Just the basics were there. And now he's turned it into a freaking fortress, and even up there has been redone. So to me, I understand where the other schools are talking about that, but what you're saying, I totally get that. Okay, well, if you have a Stu Lang at Guelph, and let's say, there was a David Sadu at UBC before he got in trouble in the States, that was pumping in money there. Obviously, that helped Michael O'Connor stay there. So it's a question of, where do we want to go here? I think the best way to do it would potentially be to create 2 tiers or 2 divisions. So you can have your guys that are ultra competitive, and then you can have your schools that, want to play football, but might not want to pump a bunch of money into it. Like Bishop's was always sort of the example in the Quebec conference, because you had Montreal and Laval clearly at the top, Sherbrooke pumping a bunch of money into their program. And McGill still wants to be really good too, but their academics just make it so tricky to get in there. And Bishop's, here's this tiny school that really just didn't have the funding to compete with the big boys. So I think if we maybe made, Division I, Division II, top tier, bottom tier, however you want to do it. And if you want to go up into the top tier, we'll just do it like soccer, right? Maybe a couple teams get relegated every year. And then you create a bunch more interest and competition. You're not just having the Vanier Cup, right? You're like, oh man, I hate to pick on these schools, but is York and Toronto going to be relegated? Is the team from tier 2? Like, is McGill going to jump up? Is Bishop's going to have a crazy thing? And like, I don't know if a lot of your listeners follow soccer, and I do a little bit, but it's like, in the Premier League, the relegation, people are almost focused on more, especially at the end of the season. And the top team is already decided.
100%. And I'm happy you brought up the Premier League, because my team, Liverpool, just won it. And with 7 games to go, and a lot of my friends are Man U fans, so I've been letting them know all long. So I'm happy you brought that up. But like the relegation battles at the end of the year, sometimes I'm more glued into, like you said, what's going on with the relegation, because those teams are playing so hard. It's like almost like college football, where not about the money. Like we're playing for pride. We're playing for what league we're going to be in next year, right? So, and they do a great job with that, and that's actually a phenomenal way of putting how the CIS should go about it, because I'd probably watch way more just to see the relegation battles. Honestly,
yeah,
no, it's actually phenomenal. So before you get out of here, I appreciate your time today. Since you're the newsman, you have a game, right? It's called Fake News.
Let's get ready to rumble!
Right, so I'm going to read a headline to you, and you have to tell me whether the fact is fake or real. Okay?
Damn, bro. All right.
And it's not all football. It's just random stuff. All right, so the first one is MLB umpires cannot be humiliated anymore. So MLB umpires are required to wear black underwear while on the job in case they split their pants. Is that a real fact or is that a fake fact?
Real.
Real. That is real, man.
Let's go. 1 for 1.
Hey, a lot of times when I do these games, I make them hard purposely, and no one is able to really do well. So you're off to a great start. All right. So in 1910, fact number 2, in 1910, an incomplete forward pass would earn teams a 15-yard penalty. Real or fake?
Damn. To think of that now where we are with football?
Yeah, think about that.
I'm going to go fake, though.
Okay. You are wrong. That's a real fact.
Oh, man.
Yeah, that's unbelievable. All right. So fact number 3, we're going to go a mega team. Okay, so in 1943, because they lost so many players to World War II military service, the Philadelphia Eagles and Pittsburgh Steelers combined their teams to make a super team called the Steagles during the 1943 NFL season. Real or fake?
So I got to say fake just because I've never heard of the Steagles. I feel like I would have heard of that at some point.
You're wrong. It is a fact.
Oh, my God. Dude, where you pull this stuff?
Honestly, I had my wife find some facts that I had never heard of before and put together everyone I hadn't heard of. And you, I knew that you know football and you know sports. So if I didn't know, I felt like you had a hard time too. Okay, so fact number 4. We got 2 more. Fact number 4. In 1972, the Dallas Cowboys hired the NFL's first professional cheerleading squad. Real or fake?
Ooh, give it to me one more time.
So the Dallas Cowboys hired the NFL's first professional cheerleading squad in 1972. I like how you asked for the question again, so you had more time.
Yeah.
Pro move.
Man, I just feel like everyone talks about the Cowboys cheerleaders for a reason.
Yeah.
But were they the first cheerleading squad? Like 72 seems late for a cheerleading squad. And one of these answers has got to be fake. So I'm going to say fake.
That was real, man.
Oh my gosh. Bro.
I was going through these. I'm like, I got to throw in a fake fact. It's going to be too easy. But I'm like, no, just leave them all real or most of them real. And see what happens though. No, you're 1 for 3 right now. Last one. They got one more chance, to get closer to respectability. Okay, so number 5. Babe Ruth wore a secret cabbage patch under his helmet to keep him cool and changed it every 2 innings. Is that real?
Man. Bro, I'm going to go with, you're probably on this real train. I'm just playing the percentages here with these questions you got. I'm going to say real.
It is real. I went all real just to see what would happen. I shouldn't have told you till the end anyways, but I ended up doing it, and you stole one from me. So that's it. 2 for 3. You are correct on the last one. You finally got the last one right, man. That's awesome.
Man. Start fast, finish strong. That's all anyone's going to remember.
Exactly. Thank you, Justin Dunks. Thank you so much for doing this. I know your time is valuable. You know, you're one of the dudes I respect in the game. You always got the facts on lock. You got more information than I do, GMs do, coaches do, man. So keep it up, man. I appreciate your time, brother.
And Tay, man, anytime for dudes like you, there's so many good dudes across the league. And honestly, when you reached out to me, you're like, you know, do you think you have a little bit of time? I'm like, I got time all day to talk to guys about Canadian ball. So honestly, bro, this was a blast. Anytime you want to have me back on the pod, man, just hit me up. And hopefully we see you making highlights this year with the Argos and back in your hometown, bro. I'd be stoked to see you on the field.
I appreciate that, man. I'm gonna take you up on that. I will have you on as much as I can. I appreciate your time again, man, and hopefully, you know, we see you out in the Hub City if it comes to that, man. Thank you.
Yeah, man. Stay COVID free.
All right, stay safe, man. Take care. Well, there you have it. Justin giving us the goods, the scoop, as usual. One step closer to a 2020 season. How big that step is, that's for you to decide. But from conversations I had with other players, friends, and colleagues around the league, if you're a fan, I wouldn't buy a jersey just yet. Still a long way to go. And even with a season, it doesn't sound like we'll have all the marquee players available, as we just saw the retirement of one of the best players in the league, James Wilder. My gut tells me he won't be the only one not to suit up this year. And as for us, we were so lucky and treated to have the source of all sources breaking it down for us in real time. I'm sure there'll be a lot more details to come. For the meantime, stay tuned, stay well, and until next week, peace.